Are all the boys you date named Homer?
Not really, but I called them all Homer. That way, I never forget their name. What's that?
Jelly beans. Have some?
Heavy. Did you see Corey outside?
I mean, writing that man a poison pen letter like that. And got the nerve enough to sign your real name. You know, Henrietta, you're going to have us all evicted.
Evicted, Mama?
Yeah, that's right. If you pay any attention to your sister, she's going to have us all living in the street.
Oh, living in the street. Man, that is totally out of sight. I can't wait.
You can't wait for what?
Now I can have my own room.
Come on now. Come on. It'll be all right. Come on. It's going to be all right. Come on now. I want you to go on. Go on and live your life. But don't sin anymore.
We had to work at it. We said we loved each other, but we didn't really know what love was. That was the good part. We went on a journey together to find out what love really is, how to treat each other. He was my best friend. Clara. Hello. Can I help you?
I'm an old friend of John's from the military.
Captain Larry Traynor. I can't believe it. The bandages.
Yeah, I was just in the neighborhood and I wondered if he...
Of course. Come in. Only you. You brought the money?
Yes.
Put it on the table. And the item? You move it from the bag without touching it. Good.
Can you help find her?
Not me. Her. Turn on the water. How much? Just a little.
What's a little?
No, that's enough. Okay, right there.
How do you know how much that is?
That's awesome. You got it.
Thank you. You know, Momo, if I had that recipe box, I wouldn't have to call you every time I had a question about measurements and ingredients.
But maybe I like you calling me grandbaby girl.
So what is that like watching yourself on screen in front of the lecture class like that?
It's a lot of fun, and it's very encouraging when I see myself, like 50 years later, sitting before beautiful young humans like yourself. Like I used to be a young human, and you know, just the power to be able to tell you how beautiful and empowering life can be in balance with its struggles and its tests and its trials. But in balance, it's all worth the fight, and it's all worth the journey, and it's all worth the faith, and it's all worth not giving up and persevering in the gifting and the callings that, you know, God has blessed you all with. And as you can see, it's been a, you know, journey. I started writing before I was an actress because, you know, as a kid you have a pen and paper. You don't need really anything outside, and I would write, you know, alone and write little poems. And my parents introduced me to poetry and great writers, black writers as well as white writers, Edna St. Vincent Millay and Angela Lansbury, and so many, you know, great writers. And so I think it's just important to experiment with the ideas that come to you and put them down on paper or create them and believe in them and push for them. So I told my parents when I was 12 that I wanted to act, because I kind of discovered that's what I was doing in the bathroom, kind of pretending there was all these different characters. And I love acting, because acting I get to hide myself into a character and create a whole new persona other than myself. So I like the idea of hiding and bringing another character to life. But I also am very enamored and inspired by writing, because as well as film, writing is something, we still have Shakespeare, James Baldwin. We can still read their mind and their works, and it can go on and endure forever. The thoughts and ideas that other writers and other thinkers, they're still available to us, So it's really important to write down your ideas, your thoughts, and your dreams. And it's very important to pursue them and to keep going no matter the age, because in terms of eternity, we're really ageless, And a little caveat, just take care of yourself. No drugs, eat right, exercise, love yourself, take care of yourself. Because I will say this, when I was in Hollywood as a young starlet, well, they had movies that they wanted to star me in. I would go to the Hollywood parties that are very similar to P. Diddy, all of that stuff is real. And there were drugs and all those types of behaviors available to me. And I really thank God. I really have to give Jesus the praise, because even though I didn't believe in him, he was with me and he was protecting me, his angels, that I didn't participate in it, because I know that if I had given into that culture and that lifestyle of the Hollywoodness, that I would not be alive to have been blessed to be before you and have 5 beautiful children and write more books and do all the wonderful things that God has planned for me. And so I say that as a loving warning to you all as young people, a loving warning, love yourself, say no. It's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to say, no, I'm not doing that. That's not me. It's okay. Yeah, so.
Classroom mom right here.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on the first question. And by the way, I did open up the discussion, so you guys have questions throughout the interview. Please put them in there, and we'll take some time to get to your questions and comments. So can you tell us, you talked about, growing up and writing first, but can you tell us a little bit about your background in writing? What inspired you, and how did you get your start? Was this your first effort in writing?
I think.
And how did that come about?
I think writing came about for me actually from playing the piano. My mother taught me how to play the piano. Interesting, right? That I was learning to play the piano, and I learned all these classical songs and old gospel songs that my mother would teach me, and then I sort of got the idea, well, I wanted to write my own lyrics and write my own melodies. So I would sit there and create my own melodies, and out of creating my own melodies, I began to write lyrics. So I think music led me into poetry and writing, and so however it comes to us in different ways, but they're all very connected. Music, writing, filmmaking, acting, it's all, very, there's a synergy to it all. So I guess the idea of what's the story that goes with this sound, what's the story that goes with this music? What's the story that fits this melody? And what's the word that fits, this beat right here, or this flow right here? Like, what are the words that fit this melody or this stanza? And so that flows into our writing, because then we have to fit, our writing, the flow of the writing, to the story, to the character. And so, it's all experience in terms of building a mood, building an experience through writing, the same that you do with music and lyrics. And then from there, I started to write little short stories. I was always a romanticist, I've always in an interview I had with a great writer named Lynell George, I told her, I said, I think I've always been in love with love. But I think I was also influenced by the media at that time, or the old movies. I don't know if you've ever seen the movies from the 50s and the 40s, but it was very romantic, like Betty Davis, right? And Wuthering Heights, and then they had Peyton Place on TV. So in the time that I was growing up, love, or a relatively healthy relationship between a man and a woman was kind of promoted on the screen. You had images of men bringing women flowers and proposing, and different amazing love stories. So I think I was kind of influenced by that as well, and I kind of wrote love stories, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So
I do think media influences,
So the film and television media you were in contact with or saw, that influenced how you wrote through your music. And I would say, actually, because I read the book from beginning to end, and it's not like your typical story. It's not like a typical novel. It feels more like a poem, or like a song, or like a screenplay. Or it's very visual. It's very like even melodic in the writing. There's a lot of melody and a lot of rhythm in the writing too. And we're going to get to some of your parts of the book that you'll read in a bit. But I think you can really see that influence in your writing, which is very unique and cool, I think. And I'm not just saying that because she's
in many of the reviews, it's considered considered a masterpiece as it relates to innovation. It's considered an innovative book as it relates to writing. But I think that's the right observation in me, that it's the flow of what I hear and then placing it in words, and it comes with a beat, it comes with a rhythm, it comes with a crescendo, it comes with syncopation. Like I explained to a reviewer that for me, periods and commas and exclamation points, in this book I don't use almost any of that. I use syncopation as my pause, as my excitement, as my break, or spaces. So
So what do you mean
I really have to say that also acting, because in my acting experience, when I was a child, my mother so marvelously put me in an acting group called the American Theater Being, that was directed by Frank Severa. And guess who was there when I was a kid? People like Maya Angelou and Bea Richards and Sidney Poitier would come through, and Nichelle Nichols, who later became one of the stars of Star Trek. And so as a kid, as a young aspiring artist, I was encouraged that even at that young age I was an artist. I was related to as an equal. I was not condescended to as a child. I was encouraged that I was complete within the age and the stage that I was in. And I think that's really important, that how they fed me encouragement, and I think it's really great, for teachers and for you, each other as fellow students and fellow human beings, to encourage and inspire one another. I was definitely encouraged to be me. I was definitely encouraged to be free. I was definitely encouraged to test the boundaries as it related to art and creativity, and to let the way it came to me have confidence. So as a young child, I wasn't told by these great artists what I couldn't do. I was told what I could do. And I'd like to share that with you. All things are possible, Trust yourself, trust your vision. And don't be afraid to be, innovative, right? Because the lights that we're using today, that's somebody's innovation, right? That's somebody's idea that they didn't exist. And probably lots of people didn't believe, right? And the airplanes and all these things that we see, a lot of it came from God, the idea that God gives to man. And they have the courage to believe in it when nobody else does, right? The funny thing, though, is one of my mentors, Don Cherry, told me that, once you start believing, a lot of times when you start out, nobody believes in you, right? But if you keep going little by little, people start to believe with you. So believe, your support will come when you stick to it. Stick to it, and the support, the opportunity, the door will open.
So I have a follow-up comment and a question. The comment is, isn't this exactly what Professor Nasser said on Monday? She talked about visionaries, and she talked about how people thought visionaries were crazy, and she did the same thing. She encouraged the class to have vision and to go after their vision and don't give up. So
it's so important. I can't tell you, because when I was a kid, there was nobody black my age on TV. Nobody. There was hardly anybody. There's a multitude of people of all nationalities and colors on TV, Asian, whatever, Mexicans or Hispanics, whatever you call them. I don't know, because names change from generation or decade. But imagine, how did I get this idea that I could be on TV? It just came to me, and I believed in it. I was 12 years old, and the first time I guest starred on TV, when nobody was on TV black, I was 13 years old. I believed, but also my parents believed, and I was in an environment of support. And also historically, there was, the Watts riot and a lot of things that kind of made the powers that be kind of open up their doors a little bit more towards us as a people. So, I try to tell everyone, white and black, and everybody in America, I think it's really important for us to remember the history of human beings, regardless of the color, and to honor everybody's history, and we can learn from each other's struggle and each other's fight, not to dismiss it, because it's a human struggle. It's not just a black struggle or a white struggle, or it's a human struggle, the struggle to be recognized and for who we all are as creations of God, with gifts and talents that we can share with the world, and no one should be, left out of that. We want everybody to play a part, because then we all receive, the wealth and the blessing from learning from one another, each other's cultures, each other's ideas, each other's visions. People are people, and we should honor, that idea.
So the follow-up question I had was, just in case we need clarity, what do you mean about syncopation in your writing? How do you describe that?
Well, maybe a good example. Can I read?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can't see this, but if you could see it, there's no periods, there's no commas, there's no capitals, but I do use capitals when I want to make an emphasis. So I'm driving along with my boyfriend at the time, husband-to-be, unknown to me. And as you can see, I was a child star, I was a starlet. I was on the cover of magazines, I was famous, very famous, because there were very few black people on television. So we really, we really stood out. And so we're driving along, and he asks me, he says, so what really happened in Hollywood? Why did you leave and go to New York when you had it made? I shrugged my shoulders and gazed out the car window, listening to the sound of the splashing, healing ocean waves. I sang ever so softly. I saw the ocean shining. I walked along its crystal light of goodness, smiling. I didn't want to remember my encounters with old, fat, gray-haired, bald-headed producers at major motion studios telling me of their pleasure of choosing me to star in their great script written with me in mind, comparing me to Dorothy Dandridge and Marilyn Monroe, disappearing into the luxurious office bathroom, making it unmistakably clear The repulsive act was required to secure the advancement of my already promising career. I'm an actress and not a prostitute, I youthfully protested. Scruples? You won't go far, the old, young, slimy producers, directors, in mocking montages laughed. I didn't want to remember telling my mother, who didn't believe me, confiding in older actress friends who encouraged me to do it. Play the game. I wasn't strong enough to remember my deep, buried graveyard, heartbroken confusion, wondering if I was the crazy one. Suicidal meditation stalking me in the valley of decisions. It was too achingly painful to summon up the memory of being blackballed by Hollywood Babylon, traumatized and alone in my election to not conform. Okay. So I'm going to read this for you, Lee, because you like this part. So this is kind of like a flashback. I've left Hollywood. I'm exploring. I'm just living on faith. Miraculously, I had money in a trust fund, but I had actually no money. And somehow, everything was provided for, everything was taken care of by fellow artists that would just, I want to say the 70s was a different time from now because it was not a narcissistic time. It was more a time of love. Like, people didn't start their art or act or write to be famous. It was never the goal to be famous. The goal was to do your art, to make the world a better place, to be creative. It was never just the blatant desire, look at me, look at me, look at me. And so the community of artists were very helpful and supportive to one another, as they were to me. And so I'm over this painter's house. His name is Joe Overstreet, and they're very upset that I left Hollywood because it's such a privilege. They consider it a privilege to have the opportunity to be in a movie or to be on television and to be famous and to make that kind of money. Like, I have to be crazy to throw that away. Because isn't that what everybody is after, to live in the Hollywood Hills, to drive a Rolls Royce, to be famous on the cover of magazines? Isn't that what everybody says is going to make you happy? That's the American dream on steroids that I had. And I walked away, I throw it away. And so one of the artists is berating me because, his concept is if I had stayed in Hollywood, not knowing the price that I would have had to pay to sleep with these men, to be in these movies, there is no one on that level that has not paid that type of price. And you need that's a price that is almost required. And so it says, so Tad tells me to shut up. But I went on talking about how I had done things in my considered to be successful times when I made a lot of money, lived in a great big house in Nichols Canyon, and walked recognized on the streets. But I wanted to protect my gift, my talent given me, and how up to that time that meant the inability to do things on a certain financial level. And how that day, when I was 19 and my car wouldn't start, and I called the Automobile Club of America to come fix it, and they sent this old black man in a rickety truck driving up the wide and Hollywood Hills, being passed by fast storming MGs and the long, slinky, ego Rolls Royces till he got to my house, hidden behind some thick shrubbery that I shared with Nancy, my best friend at the time, aspiring actress. It was hot that day, and I fixed some lemonade at the suggestion of bow-legged, stringy-haired, good soul, white girl Nancy. I sat in the front yard driveway and talked to that old black man while he repaired my car. That old black man was music. He had a cap on his head, polka-dotted in filth and grease. He'd tap his cap every now and then in a rhythmical beat. He had never seen me on TV, which was a nice feeling. He was so beautiful. A rich-skinned blues black man. You could tell he worked outdoors a lot in the sun, because his face was so shiny leathered, his hands showed he must have worked hard all his life. The smile was like the root of a tree, so deep, so alive, so nurtured in light. I could see him sitting jolly at a bar, his cap before him on the table. I could see him sitting in a church, funky Baptist pew, walking to some old gospel on fire, humble God soul singers. I wanted to ask him desperately, what gave him so much peace? What was that joy? But a suffocating shyness came out of nowhere and choked me, held me back. He got in his truck and drove down the driveway past the bushes and trees. I fought the inexplicable hindrance, broke free, and ran down the hill in an expectant, hopeful rush to ask him the question of my heart. But in a poof, he and his truck were gone.
Okay, I think this is a good place to ask.
Did you hear any of the music? Did you hear any of this syncopation?
Yes,
Yeah.
like poetry.
It's poetry.
Cadence.
It's poetry, but it's in prose. It's poetry in prose. Yeah.
So I think Devin's question. Devin, can you raise your hand? Okay, Devin's in the back. She has a good question, which I think is related to what you just read. She's asked, what awakenings did you experience in your life? What gave you the strength to disregard the Hollywood influences as a Black woman? What challenges did you face with yourself and outside influence? So first, what awakenings did you experience? What gave you the strength to disregard Hollywood influences?
Well, I think one of the gifts was the time I was born in. I was born in the 60s. I was a teen in the 60s. And what was very helpful to me was Martin Luther King, the protests, the revelation that being Black was okay. Like James Brown had a song, I'm Black and I'm Proud. My parents raising me raising all of my siblings and all of us, because, in our family there were different hues of colors in terms of, light, dark, and brown. My mother was dark skinned, my father was light, and my brother was a little dark. My sister was a little darker. I kind of took after my brother. So the idea was very much fed into us, contrary to society that taught us different, as we know, that all of us, all of the colors were beautiful, not only all of the Black colors, but all of humanity was beautiful. So, that was very important for me. And then people outside of our culture may not understand, the oppression that you kind of grow up in. My mother growing up in segregation, and, when I would go visit my grandmother in the South, I had to sit in the top of the theater. The top of the theater was where the Black folks, the bottom was for the white. When I went to visit her, we walked down the street, true story, as a Black person, if a white person walked, we had to go to the other side. It was like, but in California, I had a little bit of both worlds, where in California, there wasn't that type of segregation, but in the South and West, so I saw that difference. Then the acting class that I went to with Maya Angelou and Frank Severa, Sidney Poitier would come through. There was a great emphasis on being, artists that happened to be Black to do good work in the world, and that Black is beautiful, as white is beautiful, as Asian is beautiful, as yellow is beautiful. It's common sense. It's just so obvious, but it was very much not believed on by society. And so the naturals, the 60s, the Black Panthers, Black hair was beautiful. Black women were very much ashamed of their hair, taught to be, now everybody wants a big behind, but back then, the Black women, we naturally have big behinds, and we wanted to lose weight and whatever to fit into the white way of looking, the white concept of beauty. But all of that was obliterated by the Black arts movement, Martin Luther King, the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers were misrepresented in history because They did not hate white people. The Black Panthers were born out of the cruelty of the police abusing us. And, you know, we didn't have cell phones, and we had no way to prove it. And we had no way to prove that we were being abused and mistreated by police and, you know, guns and black people dying, you know. And we knew it among ourselves, you know. And we were always, you know, my mother would always, like, cower down in the car if the police stopped my dad. My dad was a scientist. My mother was an educator, but we were treated like criminals. And so, and we were, you know, like, law-abiding citizens. So the Black Panthers, you know, the Constitution says we have the right to bear arms, but, you know, not black people. And so the genesis of their group was really to defend black people when the police stopped us, you know, that we had some defense because, you know, we could end up dead. And there was no, as you know, now we can sort of prove it, but the police would say, oh no, we were there, this and that. And granted, there are criminals in our race, as there are criminals in all races, but everybody, you know, was not a criminal. And so it was like very unfair, very unjust. And so the move for justice, you know, as Martin Luther King talked about. And so all of that inspired me to believe in myself, believe in my hair, believe in my big nose, my big lips, my big behind. You know, the movement in society supported us. And, you know, I think we needed that as a people, and we need to, because we were living in a society that said that we were second best. So we needed to be reminded that we were as beautiful as anybody else and as intelligent as anybody else. And
so
then
you had the social aspect of things going on in society, protests, black power, empowerment, that encouraged you to walk away. But I think she's also getting at what's the spiritual awakening that you had. And I think that's a part.
Yeah, so that, you know, I read to you about when the guy comes up to fix my car, right? And how he disappeared, right? I ran down the hill and I wanted to ask him what gave him that joy. Because he was not rich like me, or had money like me, or living in the Hollywood Hills like me, and and I'm the miserable one, and he's the happy one. So I was scared to ask him, but then I finally got my guts up to ask him, and I ran down the hill, and he was gone. True story. So I'm standing on the hill, and he's gone, and I'm like, where did he go? That's impossible, because he's old. He drove so slow. And I heard the audible voice of God say to me, Allison, call me by my name. I say, Allison, there goes a little star. And I was shocked because everybody was telling me I'm a star and I'm going to be a star, and I was already a star. But this voice from heaven, literally from heaven, called me by my name and said, that man that nobody knows, he's not rich, he's not acclaimed, he's not on the cover of magazines, he's the star. In my kingdom, in God's kingdom, humility, those that worship God, it's not about being famous, it's not about being even rich like a lot of false prophets and preachers preach today. It's about being in a right relationship with God, walking with humility and justice before God and loving our neighbor as ourselves. And that guy had that. He had the joy of the Lord. And then I went into the house, and I lived in the hills, and that whole window was what, you know, the whole wall, like this whole wall is a window. And I don't know what's happening, you know, I think I'm losing my mind because I don't know that it's God talking to me. I don't know that it's God. Like, what is happening to me? And I run in the house to tell my friend Nancy, by the way, Nancy is Cindy Williams, who later became one of the stars of Laverne and Shirley. Have you all ever seen that show? That was my best friend at the time, Cindy Williams. And I'm saying, Cindy, I heard this voice, and then I look on the window, and the vision that I see is I was compared to Dorothy Dandridge. Like, you're going to be a star like Dorothy Dandridge. I see Dorothy Dandridge dying and Marilyn Monroe dying. And for some odd reason, I was compared to Marilyn Monroe because they were going to make me to a sex symbol, a black sex symbol. And I see them dying in this vision. Because Hollywood is all about sex. It's not about talent. It's, you have to sell sex. So I tell Cindy, did you see that? And she doesn't see it. Only I see it. And that's how I knew. I was like, if I stay here, if I pursue this path, God was so merciful to show me that vision, because then I could connect the two, even though I didn't really know what was happening to me. If I stay here and pursue this false sense of stardom, this deception, this lie, I'm going to die. And you can die while you're living. Like you look at Justin Bieber, you look at a lot of these young child stars that I come out of that system. It's heartbreaking to see what happens when you stay in that, and the way they degrade you and debase you and make you bow down to that god of Babylon, which is sexual perversion, sleeping with them, and which we know as time has gone on, with the Me Too movement, it's been exposed, right, on the internet and YouTube and different things. But 50, 60 years ago, we didn't have the YouTube, and that's just the way it was. And if you didn't bow down and if you didn't do it, then you didn't go any further, and that was fine with me, because it's a crazy idea that sex was for love. I didn't know the biblical standard of God that you wait until you're married for sex, and sex is sacred, and you wait until you're married. But I did believe, just looking at my mother and my father, that example that, sex was for love, and I'm not a prostitute. I think the encouragement and the support that Maya Angelou and Bea Richards and Frank Severe also gave me that natural confidence as it related to my craft. I studied for this. What are you talking about, producer? I went to acting school for this. I've studied acting. I'm an actress. I'm a professional actress. What? Are you crazy? Plus, they were ugly. They were old. I'm 19 years old. And they're fat and pat-bellied and bald-headed. Nowadays they might be kind of physically cuter. I don't know. But they were gross, right? So that didn't help. And that was definitely a deterrent, But then later on in life, I had an encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ. It was a process. Today, when I was preparing to come here, I was thinking, I don't know if you've ever heard of St. Augustine, but Leif's father, my husband, later became a film professor at Chapman University, and one of the books that he had the students read was the St. Augustine's Confessions. And one of the revelations that came to me today was that my book, this is like a modern-day version in a female way in terms of St. Augustine's, confessions. As he shares in his book, all the sins, all the different things that he went through and partook in, but how he had an encounter with Jesus. He had an encounter with God, and it transformed his life, and it transformed my life. And an encounter with Jesus brought the contentment to me. As long as I cleave to him and abide in the secret place of the Most High and walk close to him, walking with God brings a contentment and the peace that everybody's looking for in the wrong places, in fame and fortune and, love. Oh, if I only had, a husband, or if I only had this, or I only had that. All of that is obliterated when we no longer have these idols, these false idols that we think are going to satisfy us. And we surrender to God and give our lives to him, and then he begins to unfold the path. And as we stick with him, the Bible says if you keep your mind on him, it keep you in perfect peace. And you really have to keep your mind on him, especially nowadays, right? This is a whole different, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. God will give you peace in the midst of the chaotic time that you may be growing up in, and that you can be a light, a voice of light in this chaotic time, a voice of reason, a voice of love. It's very important, because one of the things I loved about the decade that I grew up in is that the message from Martin Luther King and all of those people was love. The message was love. It's important that we hold the powers that be accountable, and that they hear truth, and that we don't let truth fail in the street, that we stand up, but that we speak the truth in love. And we can do that. You can do that.
So
You can do that.
that's in line with Shay's question. If you could raise your hand so we, yes, she asked.
Where's Shay? Oh, hi, Shay.
She asked, you spoke about how the media used to be different and show more love.
Mm-hmm.
When did you see a shift in the media, and how do you feel about it now?
Oh, the media is evil. Period. Now, especially as it relates to, well, let me put this in context. I think historically, as it relates to black people, the images of black people have never really, in terms of media, rightly represented us. But there was more, the culture was a little bit cleaner, so you got shows like Julia, or, Family, or the Bill Cosby, or you got movies that were not so, that didn't promote the worst of humanity. But I think it's across the board for all humans, as it relates to, regardless of your race, it's a very degrading time, I believe, as it relates to being an artist. And I always feel that an artist is called to be an artist to create positive light and to make the world a more beautiful place. So, I think that the media, the promotion, the increased promotion of pleasure versus love versus kindness, just sexual pleasures, the profanity in the music, the misrepresentation of women, and especially black women in music. When I was growing up, Diana Ross, they dress nice, they look like ladies. You guys have to eat and drink Megan Thee Stallion, and people half naked singing. Like, why do you have to be half naked to sing? One thing that was nice about Whitney Houston, gorgeous voice. She didn't have to be half naked to get her record deals. Nowadays, like if you don't bow down in that way, like I had to bow down in that way, you don't get the kind of promotion that the artists like Stevie Wonder and like a Bob Dylan. You have to be wicked. You have to sell sex. You have to sell profanity. You have to sell to get a record deal and promote violence, because it's all connected. I'm a chaplain. I go into the prisons and the jails, and a lot of the music is geared towards filling the mind with hatred towards one another or violence. Am I correct? Gearing especially young black males to be violent, to denigrate black women, not to respect. We were raised to honor our mother and our father, and so it's very sad for me to see at the age of 74 to see black music and black culture move away from the beauty that it used to be. The music used to be so beautiful, wasn't it? Like it was just Donny Hathaway and Marvin Gaye, old school music. Yes.
So I have two follow-up questions. I'm going to ask a question from Delina after I ask this question. And I'll check and see if any more questions are in here. So my first question is, since we're talking about culture, in what ways do you feel like the writing of Francisco can influence culture or can have an impact on culture?
Well, I'm hoping that it can show the transformation, because I just spoke about profanity. This book does have profanity in it. I wrote it when I was 19, when I wasn't saved. and I didn't know the Lord. But it shows a transformation of coming out of that darkness, even though there was some light in me. I had some light, and I thank God. When I look back to my younger self, I thank her. Because what I did know was right, I did. What I didn't know, I didn't know, and I didn't learn till later. So you can't do what you don't know. Does that make sense? So, but what I did know to be right, I did. So I thank my younger self for that. And I think what you all can maybe learn or grow or be strengthened is that when you look at me, I'm 74, I've had a gorgeous, beautiful life. The last 50 years of my life have been basically lived in obscurity. Just living a normal life, raising my children, loving my husband, doing the work of the Lord, being a chaplain, being an artist, writing, doing some acting. I think the beautiful thing is to do the work and let the work lead you to the goal, the success that it brings to you. And trust God to provide for your needs, but to make the goal fame and fortune. As I see so many people on YouTube, and you see a lot of young people, right, with all these millions of hits or whatever, and the Rolls Royces and stuff, and then it's not even real, it's deception, right? Some of it's not even real, and then they end up getting towards the point that I was at when I was in Hollywood, suicidal, because it does not satisfy. But in balance, you need your education, you need these opportunities. And so I encourage you to go through those doors and have those opportunities, but keep a balance about you that, no, I don't have to, bow down to you. I have a God that's greater. And be free to walk away or to create your own path, which is what I unknowingly did in my youth,
So Delina asks, what made you decide to format Francisco as a novel, specifically over the other mediums of writing that you have done? And Delina, can you raise your hand? And you're talking about poetry, the other forms of writing?
And the short stories.
What short stories?
Short stories. What inspired me to do
Why did
novels?
you decide that specific?
Oh, I have another
format?
novel that I wrote called Maggie 3. Well, to be really transparent, when this first book that I published, tell me your name again? Delina. I didn't really know I was writing a book. I was just being disciplined and writing every day. Isn't that marvelous? And it turned into a book. I was just writing every day, actually just writing about my life, about what I was experiencing in my relationship with Francisco. I was just, because I wasn't acting, I grew up very disciplined, I had to be on the set at 3 in the morning. And so I was used to working, I was used to being productive. But in this relationship, I was enjoying not being the main focus. I was enjoying supporting Francisco. I was enjoying kind of being under the radar. But I needed my own little private thing to do that kept me connected to my art. And so I just started writing every day. Well, I helped him with his film and journeyed with him. This was my artistic outlet. And I was very disciplined. I wrote it pretty much every day. And then if I didn't write, it would draw me back and call me back, and I would keep writing. And unbeknownst to me, it turned into a book. And it's been republished, and it's been republished in French, and written about in Vogue magazine and Bazaar, and New York Times, and oh my goodness, all of these amazing, fantastic reviews. With some people hating it as well. There's always that.
So how was it published the first time, if it wasn't meant to be a book initially?
So, I grew up in a very artistic environment. My boyfriend at the time was a filmmaker. He was friends with a writer named Ishmael Reed. I suggest you look him up, great writer. And as I said, I was writing every day. And this writer came over, and I had left my writings on the table to go do something. I didn't remove it from the table. I don't know. I guess
And this is with paper and pen?
It was paper and pen, just writing every day with paper and pen,
tablets,
diligently.
computers.
If you are a writer, if you are an artist, if you are creative, if you are an inventor, a scientist, whatever it is, you just gotta be disciplined, work on it every day, or at least 3 times a week. Don't, you know. And so I left all this little scribbling paper on the table, and when I came back, they were reading it. The writer was reading it. And he was loving what I was writing. He said, I'm going to publish this. Innovation. He had never published a book. But the idea came when he was reading. I'm going to publish, my name at the time was Alison Mills. I'm going to publish her book. Innovation. He'd never published a book before. The book, that's the cover of the original that Ishmael Reed and his publishing company. That's the original book. Never published a book. He said, I'm going to publish your book, right? And he did it. He stuck with it. They raised the money. And they published their first book and my first book. And it also got great reviews in the New York Times and et cetera, but not like today. But it was an underground hit in the artistic, black artistic world. Like everybody read it. And then they taught it in colleges. It's still taught. They teach this book in colleges. I was at NYU, and then I've been invited to a lot of different colleges to talk about this book down through the years. And it's taught because of the style, because of the writing, and also because of the history. Because of its place in history. It really gives you the vision of that time that I grew up in. So for historical reasons, artistic reasons, it's taught in universities today. Yeah.
So I want to ask one more question, and then I'll let you end by any last comments. And before you guys get up and leave, is it okay if she takes a picture with the class? Okay, cool. Anybody that doesn't want to take a picture, you can step out after her last comment.
Can I ask them a question?
We don't have time.
Oh, okay.
Class is almost over. So quickly, Naja Brown, if you raise your hand. Did they leave? Okay, that's her. We met her in the back.
Oh, yes.
Naja, she said, I understand that pursuing fame in fields like acting, singing, or dancing can present significant challenges. With that in mind, I wanted to ask, did you ever have to make personal sacrifices in pursuit of your career, especially as a teen? For example, in the areas of relationships, family, education, or even adjusting your public persona to maintain a certain image?
Well, all of those, absolutely. Every single one that you listed, I had to make sacrifices and challenges. I think one of the reasons I was so enamored of Francisco is that being famous on that level, you never know if somebody likes you for you. And so I didn't experience any kind of sincere, genuine, that I thought, interest in me when I was on television. So that was one thing. I didn't go to school a lot. I went to school on set, so I didn't have a childhood. Like you hear about Michael Jackson not having a childhood. That's real. I didn't have a childhood, and I really experienced my childhood in my 30s and my 20s when I was raising my kids. I missed out on being a kid in a lot of ways. I was spoiled. I didn't grow up washing dishes and having chores, and things like that. And I acknowledge that I was spoiled, and I don't think that's a good thing. I think my parents should have made me wash the dishes and make up my own bed and do stuff like that. I think it's good to have that balance. They didn't have that balance. But I had to be on the set early in the morning, 3 in the morning. I had to learn those lines. I had to be professional. And back in the day, whenever you were successful like that, and you were black, you know, it was very important that you represented the race. So when I was sitting on the, you know, in parades and cars and stuff, it was very important to represent humanity, all humanity, but also my people, you know, in a good light. That can be kind of daunting, you know, for a 14 and 15, 16-year-old person. That's a lot of pressure. To be a child star is a lot of pressure. You know, so when you look at the ones today, Justin Bieber, you know, I tell you all, pray for him, because it's not an easy thing to surrender to that life and to come out whole, you know. But God can make you whole. God can heal. God can help you. God can help us.
So what's the question that you wanted to ask before we end?
So I wanted to ask, what did you think of this story and this journey and anything that I said that resonated with any of you? Did anything resonate with any of you? Because you're like 40, 50 years younger than me, maybe. I was just curious if there's like a place where the age and the color and nothing matters, and and whatever was said resonated with any of you on a human level. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like a lot that you said kind of resonated with a lot of my passions, but I'm really trying to step into a stage where I'm coming out of living for others or being influenced by other influences instead of myself. So when you're saying you're going through a spiritual awakening where the man appear and you through spirit, you had the voice of just saying you are the star and you can make your own path. So I think that really resonates with me. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you for saying that. I just want to say real quickly, because, you know, there was a song back in the 70s, everybody is a star. You all heard that star? Everybody.
That's Devin, right?
Yeah.
Okay, he has a question. And tell us your name, please.
My name is Caleb.
Caleb.
I honestly relate a lot to kind of just your inspiration, because I was 12 when I started writing, and that's when I wanted to get into acting and everything. And I really resonated with your resilience in the industry as a black woman, but also as a black woman in like the 60s and the 70s. And yeah, I just feel like I had a lot to relate to in some ways.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's give Miss Alison Mills-Newman a hand. Thank you so much for coming. And we're going to take a quick picture, so don't leave just yet.
My beautiful daughter.
And